Hi, welcome to our second video in our three-part series on creating an Excel-based budget. You can read more at www.thefinancepro.net. So this is the second video. If you haven't watched the first video, you may want to go back and watch how to build an Excel-based check register. It's not difficult. Just by looking at it, you can probably do it. But if you want a little bit more instruction, visit www.thefinancepro.net. Click on the budgeting tab at the top and then click on Jump Your Mental Hurdle, and the video's posted there. Okay, so this is the second video. We're going to talk about actually creating the budget. And this is another pretty simple process. I do it right out to the right of my check register that I built. And I think a lot of people have seen the monthly budgeting sheets that a lot of people use. I know people that use those and they're on paper, and that's fine. But I like to use Excel because Excel was designed for this, and it makes the whole process a lot easier. So that's really all we're going to do is we're going to create, we're going to list out our monthly income and expenses, and link it up with our check register over here so we know where we are, and we can roll it forward. Now in our next video we're going to talk about those expenses that change every month or every week or whatever it is, and those are going out to dinner, groceries, that new handbag that you have to have, all those things that we all spend money on that maybe we can do a better job at. Okay, so again, this process is pretty simple. We're going to list all of our income and expenses, and a lot of our income and expenses don't change that much, especially some of the bigger items, car payments, mortgages, and whatnot. So, in this case, let's say I get, and this information is from the last video that we did. So, it's some of that information's in there. Imagine you're doing this from scratch, and you're just starting this whole process. So let's say I get paid $2,500. Oh, one thing, I do this on a bi-monthly basis. I've always found that breaking things down into smaller pieces makes them more manageable. So, I know a lot of people do this on a monthly basis, and that's fine if that works for you and if you're going to keep up with it. But, um, I actually sit down with my budget on a weekly basis. I update my check register, and I start linking things to my budget. And then on the second week during the month, or I've always gotten paid on a bi-monthly period, so it's just always kind of makes sense to do this on a bi-monthly period. But whatever works for you is the best. This is a very flexible process. So just going down through this process, let's say I pay the mortgage every month, and I pay some utilities, and I pay a phone bill. Maybe I make a car payment. Now you should list out as many bills that you have on a monthly basis. Don't group bills, in my opinion. If you prefer to do it that way, it's fine. But for example, if you have two car payments, list out car payment two. If you have two phone bills, I suppose that's possible. List out the second phone bill. Add as much detail to this section as possible, and I think it makes the process easier because you can see where maybe your budget, maybe the numbers you're plugging in the first time aren't right, and you can revise going forward. And the more detail that you have, the easier that is to do. Okay, so what else am I spending on a monthly basis? There's probably a lot more here, but for demonstration purposes, well, I know one thing that is a big expense in my household: child care. And then everything else, all those monthly expenses that get paid, that fluctuate, the gas, groceries, all that stuff. That's going to be in our next video. That all goes over here. But for the moment, when you're building this thing out, plug in what you think you spend, or I guess more likely, more useful, plug in what you would like to spend. So let's pretend in this case I think that I usually spend $750 on all that stuff. But let's pretend that maybe I'm going to try to save some money at the grocery store. And I know that I usually spend about $750, but I want to do better. And let's say I'm going to plug in, say $650. I'm going to try to save. I think I can do better. So, you know, then you're going to plug in what these things actually are. You know, some of these will fluctuate, you know, depending on where you live. I mean, I spend a lot more money cooling the house in the summer than I do in the winter. So my utility bills usually go up, plus I have to water the yard. My utility bills usually go up a lot. I happen to live in a community where it's all on one bill. It's pretty handy, but if you have a water bill, a power bill, a gas bill, list all of those things out. Make it easy on yourself. Let's say I'm spending $200 per car. Childcare is, well, it's a lot more than this, but let's plug in 150 and then just sum all these things. Now, here's where the rubber kind of hits the road. I think we're going to find here that I'm spending more than I'm making. And I would like to say this is an uncommon thing in this country, but it's not. I'm spending about $200 more in this particular period than I'm making. And again, you know, U.S. consumers have accumulated $12 trillion of consumer debt. And I think some of that occurs because of situations just like this, where, you know, I'm clearly spending more than I'm making in this situation. And in this situation, I may not have a lot of choice. I mean, where am I going to cut? Am I going to get rid of a car? That would do it, but I need 2 cars. You know, I need a phone. I need utilities. I have to have a place to live, and my other expenses are kind of maxed out. So this isn't always a situation where people are being irresponsible. Sometimes this is a situation where, you know, we're just not making enough to cover our basic expenses. That's not always the case. And plus, there's more to this. So when you know, let me doctor this spreadsheet a little bit more. So this is just a 2-week period, right? So we have to roll this down into the next 2 weeks, because I don't know about all you guys, but you know, the first of the month is always a crunch in my house. You know, we have the mortgage, we have car payments that go out, you know, and so you have to roll this down to the next period to see how you're really doing for the month. This is a cumulative spreadsheet, so you know, you have to include the beginning balances in both of these columns. So when I do this sum here, I'm going to include this balance. And when I do this sum here, I'm going to include this balance. This is very important, or else this whole process doesn't work. Now, if I had to pay my mortgage again, if I had to pay those car payments again, I'd be in real trouble here. But that's not the case. So in your second period here, you're going to, you know, include what you spend in the second half of the month. And I think for most people it's less than the first half of the month. I know some people are smarter than me and are able to spread those costs over the month a little bit better, but I'm not good at that. So let's say in the second half of the month, I don't really have a lot to pay. You know, I'll have childcare. Again, let's say it's $150. It's not $150. I don't know anybody who pays $150 for childcare. To be a little bit more realistic, and that's probably not realistic either. Luckily, my kids are a little bit older and go to after school programs rather than daycare, that was a whole different world. So I'm sure there's other things here, but in this case, let's say cable didn't include that. Let's say we're paying a couple $100 a month on credit card payments. Okay, so, and then I forgot to put my variable. Okay, so now I'm down to $700 a month. Now, visit www.thefinancepro.net, read the snowball post under, I'm not exactly sure where it is, but create your debt snowball. This is a good opportunity for that. You've got credit card balances that you're paying $250 a month on. You have $700 of excess. It may feel good to put that into savings, but long term you're going to get a much better return if you just increase your credit card payments by that $700 and get those things paid off. So that's all so that's basically this whole process. This is the number we're going to talk about next time. Once you're done with this whole thing, and once we've created this section over here in our next video, all you have to do to create an annual budget is copy this whole thing 12 times, and that's an annual budget. It rolls forward every month. As long as you get your formulas right, you suddenly have an annual budget, and it's not that hard. So now that you've created that, what you need to do is as you're inputting activity over here and from your bank account, you have to link it to your budget. So for example, I got paid. It happens to be the same thing every month. There's not a lot of mystery there. Same thing with my mortgage. Let's say my car payment was $200, because that's not going to change. There should be no mystery there whatsoever. One other thing. I always put a column in for if this is a real number, or I should say a budgeted number versus an actual number. Because those two items are paid. This item is paid. I do the same thing over here. That means that this has been put into my budget. This has not yet. So here's a situation where I budgeted $200 and my utility bill came in at $210. That happens all the time. I have never once budgeted the right number for utilities, but I've budgeted within $10, and so that's close enough. So in this situation, I'm actually over budget on utilities, which may mean that, there's nothing you can do about that. But if that was a number, that was going to consistently be higher, then you have to look at that $200 that was in your budget and see if that made sense. Whoop! I forgot to hit shift. So those are updated. Then let's say I paid my, phone bill. No, that's not how you do that. On the 8th. And let's say my son went over in minutes, so let's say it's $120, and I have to go yell at him because we went over budget because of all of that texting that he likes to do. So that's the whole process. You're just going to input information over here. You're going to link it up to your budget, and this is the number we're going to talk about next time. That's a little bit more involved, and that's where you're probably going to save the most money on a monthly basis. But as you do this process, and if you didn't have excess down here, say there's no way you can get by without spending $1,000 every 2 weeks, which I'm not being judgmental. I understand that's just the situation that a lot of families face. and that's just what it is, then you have to kind of look at some of these other items. Can you spend $150 for cable? So keep that in mind as you're doing this process, that this is the time that you're looking at all those expenses and saying, can we afford that? Because I personally couldn't afford cable, and I'm a cord cutter, and so I went down to Netflix and some of those streaming services, and we as a family have gotten used to that. And I save probably, we were spending $200 a month on cable, and now we're spending $40 in total on all on all those services. So these things are not static. Look at these numbers and make sure they make sense. Okay, so that's it for this video. In our next video, over here, next video, we're going to talk about your monthly spending and see if there's any opportunity to save money there. As always, if you have any questions, please go to www.thefinancepro.net. There's a lot of good information on how to save money, and more importantly, the impact of spending money over time. So www.thefinancepro.net, and check back for our next video, and I'll see you next time.